Hello, everyone. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing
Great,
great.
thanks, Colin.
Heiko, did you get nailed with the snow?
A little bit. It's not that much yet, so we're still on the plus side during the day, but during the night it's really cooling down. So yeah, we have a little bit of snow on the ground, and it's good to stay home and not to have to be traveling. So
Hmm. Living in the southernmost city in Canada, we actually got hammered for once. Usually we don't get it too bad. Windsor, Ontario. So I'm Colin Breckles with Castle Breck, and myself and co-core team member Heiko Voigt are here with a special guest today that we're excited to bring you. This is a topic that people in the community are pretty excited about, and customers may not have heard. So let me allow Heiko to introduce himself.
thanks, Colin. My name is Heiko Voigt. It's the first video in for C3UG I'm currently on. Well, just a couple of words about myself. I'm running two IBM partner shops currently, one in Germany, one in Canada. Currently, I'm in Canada, and as you were listening already, we had like stuff to do about the weather, the growing weather talk. That's always a good thing to start off a conversation. We were mostly doing software development and consulting, and in that specific area, we met with our special guest today. But enough for my introduction, so let's get the ball rolling.
Absolutely. And for those of you who haven't seen Heiko in our videos yet, well, he hasn't been on any videos, but he's a core team member. And many of you who might have attended our coast-to-coast in-person events where we simulcasted from a whole bunch of Canadian cities, including Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, and Edmonton. Heiko was there and prominent, and actually he gave a really compelling presentation at one of them. And so Heiko's been here all along, helping between the scenes. It's great that schedules align, and he's with us today in person. And Heiko, who do we have with us today, and what's the topic?
Well, we have a very, very special guest today that I'm really humbled to have in my first video. We go a little bit way back. I think we met a couple of years earlier when I had the pleasure of having Maureen Leland at one of my Those Fear Comes to You events at that point in time, presenting with Phil Rion the new stuff about Designer and X Pages at that point in time. And I'm really, really glad to have her back here with us today, talking about her new baby, about Connections Pink application development, and especially about Project LiveGrid. And well, we called that session Apps for Everyone. And I think, Maureen, just let us know. We're all curious to see what you have in stock for us.
Thank you, Heiko. That's very kind. I must confess to a soft spot for Canada. I grew up in Buffalo, actually Tonawanda, so it was right across the lake or river, depending on where you were. So hello, Canada. Okay, so I'm here today to talk about, as Heiko said, Connections Pink and App Dev, and especially LiveGrid. So I'm just going to go through a few slides just to set some context, and then we will be doing some demo. So first of all, what is this Connections Pink thing? You may have heard the terms blue, green, and pink. And then, so blue refers to the Connections on-premise code that you may very well be familiar with, on-premise installs of Connections like 4, 5, 5, 5, 6. Hopefully you're all on 6 if you're on-prem. Connections green is the cloud, which has Connections 6 inside it, as well as some other things like Box.com. The first pink feature is Orient Me. It shipped first in blue, and then it just went to green cloud very recently, which brings us to Connections Pink, which is a brand new code base, rethinking connections, rebuilding connections, but in an evolutionary way. So it's definitely interoperability, because clearly we can't rebuild connections in overnight. Okay, Connections Pink. What are 4 main things about it? First of all, continuous delivery. No more of those 18-month release cycles between 5.5 and 6, or 5 and 5.5. So you'll get newer code faster. Basically, when we fix a bug, it goes out to cloud in hours, or it can go to your on-premise deployment. So upgrade becomes much simpler and streamlined. We're moving to a microservice-based architecture and sharing a lot of things across the applications. And this sharing is letting us build features a lot faster. It's a better platform. It's a better performance, and it's building something awesome. And you'll notice everything on the right is really app dev focused, customizable, expandable. We have learned from history. Connections has been very difficult to customize in the past. If you did customize it and you upgraded, you had to redo your customizations often. So now app dev, APIs, customizing is a high priority from the beginning, designed from the beginning, and really defines Connections Pink. Everything is an API, and you'll be seeing why in a minute. Now, the technology stack, I mentioned modern CI/CD before. Strong loopback. That's a very neat platform that we're using in many of our microservices. Swift and Go, React.js for the web clients, databases Mongo, Redis for caching and communication, Nginx to serve up the UIs, and Docker to package it all up. So brand new technology stack, very efficient, and we're having a lot of fun with it and building great apps. Which brings us, what is one of those apps? What is the new baby? And why are we doing it? So first of all, what are situational applications? People with a Domino background can instantly know the answer to this, but they're applications that are created in the moment. They are created thinking, oh, we just need this application for a month or so while we gather this data. And then you find out 10 years later your organization is absolutely dependent on them, because a lot of value comes out of these situational applications. They start off solving a particular business need, but then they grow over time to meet the needs of the group. And they're meant to be built by anyone in the group, no need for an enterprise developer to build something fancy or put it in the queue and wait for that. And I remember in 2004, I went to a presentation on RMonk, and they were all excited about situational applications and talked about Clay Shirky. I think he even came and talked there and talked about this and how this brand new idea. And I was sitting there, and I'd been working on Domino Designer for almost a decade at that point, and said, well, I didn't say it out loud because it was a very large crowd, but we've been building situational applications for a long time. We have a lot of expertise in this space. So why do they exist? They let people build applications. Connections, Domino had this, but Connections never did. So it adds value to Connections to let people use it as an application platform also. It gives you the ability to customize that platform. It makes Connections flexible, our users happier, there's a need for this. I love building app dev tools, so it certainly was an easy sell to me when Jason came in my office and said, what about this idea? And I sort of went, yes. So what is LiveGrid? It's an application builder, of course, easy to use, drag and drop, no low, and it will also be high code framework. For enterprise employees with or without coding knowledge, you can build rapid, flexible, interactive applications. Anything. You could build a simple list, or you could build a 10-page application, and we'll see that soon. And the magic, because I love app dev and because we're Connections Pink and everything in Pink is an API, these applications have APIs. You're not just, you know, if Grandma's building an application, she's also building an API. And the cool thing is she doesn't need to know or care, but someone who wants to use that data, it's all there for them. So what are the basic steps? And I'll show you this in a demo, but basically you define your data or you can connect to data. There are a number of different things. You describe the fields you want to collect and deal with in your application. You could start from another. I'm trying to avoid the template word. I'm probably going to end up using the template word. I should also mention before I forget, LiveGrid is not going to be the final name of the product. We are having many internal discussions about what we should call this puppy. Puppy was not accepted, but we are working on the name, but it will not be LiveGrid. Anyway, so this word grid won't be there in the final release, but start from an existing app or whatever we call these things.
Maureen,
start from a spreadsheet. Yeah.
We may want to also throw in, we've mentioned Domino several times thus far, but the runtime's not actually Domino based. It just, you happen to have such a deep background in Domino prior to this, right? And
yes.
Of course, Domino customers have some features for them in it. What is the runtime based on?
The runtime is, there's a Mongo database as the back end, and there is Loop. It's the Pink stack. There's Mongo in the back end. There's Node, Express, Loopback. I mean, that's our back end. Now, the application you build will interact with this back end through APIs. We are a React application in the front end. When you design an application, you are designing pages that have objects, all of which are expressed in JSON and accessible through API. Because it's all open and API based. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. So yes, Domino is a possibility. It is not a requirement. So different ways. So you can drag and drop your UI. We have an app, a page builder. We're not calling it a form builder because we build pages. Right now, the work to build multiple pages is going on about maybe 50 yards from me, but it's not yet in the product, so I won't be able to show it yet, but it is happening. So you have a full UI builder. You can compute based on either to events. You can respond to events, either back-end events or front-end events, and you can write, you'll definitely be able to write formula language in the first release, and we are working to get JavaScript in the first release, and if it doesn't make first release, then we're continuous delivery. It will be as soon as humanly possible after it. I'm still working hard for the first release because we know it's very important. So basically, you can compute many things, default values of field, before save, after save. So you can put your logic to define your internal workflows. If you want to, you can actually do a lot without writing any logic at all. The formula language might look familiar: math functions, text functions, logic functions. If they're gray, we already have them in and working. We're also thinking about adding some specific connections at functions, like, wouldn't it be neat if you could just pop a business card by saying @bizcard? So formula language you can think of as being good. You know, it's good for people who don't know enterprise programming. It's also good for lazy enterprise programmers because sometimes it's just easier to say @now or @yesterday or something like that than to go through everything that's required to calculate that. So formula language, it will be available. It will also be available in a lot of the Pink components. It's being built in tandem with LiveGrid, but not only for LiveGrid.
Maureen, just
share.
One question.
Sure.
As I look at the potential add formulas for connections, what does that mean for the product itself? Is this a standalone product that you're talking about, or is it something that definitely needs a connection environment to run in?
We use a lot of connections components. There will be something called component packs. Offering management is still working on exactly how they're packaging and pricing and part numbers and all that stuff. But we have heard a lot of requests for standalone. So even if we include connections components, we still have the capability to ship it standalone. You'll just have a few more Docker containers. And like the people service that comes from connections would need to, and it can, import and deal with the people data that you expose to it. So that is being looked at. It will definitely be part of connections, and there is strong reason and thought around also making it standalone. I wish I could say the final decision was made, but it hasn't been made yet. So.
Okay.
Let's see, so you'll be able to share it. So and these roles will look a little familiar to Domino people. Domino people may say there's one missing. We are trying to simplify and make things nice and clean, but you can control the access. You can decide if this application is only for you, or if you want it to share it with the whole world. It's up to you. You can decide if other people can contribute to the design of it, or if they can just run it. You can embed these puppies, well, not pup, I still call them puppies. And you can run them full scale. And I promised you APIs, and every application you build has a complete API. So, you know, if I make an application called Think Speakers, which I will do, that application, look at all the things you can do to it. So Grandma might make this list, but the enterprise programmers in your organization, that data isn't siloed. It's available to work with. So, and these are just here for the taking. So at that point, I would love to actually show you the code. Slides are great for an overview, but code is a lot more exciting.
Is it worth mentioning what loopback and strong loop are for those that aren't familiar with them?
That probably is fair. I've been working with them for over a year. So they are frameworks. Loopback and strong loop are effectively the same thing. Loopback is an open source framework that wraps the Express framework that is on top of the Node framework. But what Loopback does for you is that it gives you data access in a very pretty way. And it basically, when I'm accessing my Mongo database, I'm just hitting it with APIs. I define my model structure very similarly to how a user defines an application in LiveGrid, except, all right, I do use JSON files, but it ends up being the very same format. So, you know, if I define my application, it has a number of fields. So I can just, by using Loopback, I get the database access for basically free, and I get APIs to access that same data for free. And by using this platform, that is why our applications have APIs, because we are doing the very same thing for the applications Grandma builds. If she writes her expenses application, we're defining a loopback model, and we're just creating it dynamically, which then creates the API dynamically. And we add a UI to it and things like that. But it's that same principle at work. If Loopback is giving us those free APIs for all the applications. So maybe we shouldn't take credit for it. Absolutely. And it is, to be fair, even though it is open source, it is an IBM product. So there is, it's API Connect, but we don't need most of API Connect, so we're just going straight to the loopback open source stuff. But if we hit a question, we can just ping someone on same time. So it's great to work with, actually. So
beautiful.
All right, so let me get out of that, and let's show you a bouncing baby live grid. So let's see, let me take this, lots of screen here. All right, so here is a bouncing baby live grid with some puppies in it because the girl doesn't change her spots too much. So let me just start by creating an application. Now, a very simple way to do it is to start from a spreadsheet. If you have a spreadsheet that's been collecting data, that's one of the use cases that we have found a lot of people have. And one of the problems we're solving is that people end up either sharing spreadsheets or to collect information across a group or emailing them around and then ending up with some sort of merge nightmare. So imagine if it could be an application. So let me upload a spreadsheet. Let's see. Let me find my Think speakers. So here we go. Let's open it. And I can actually choose which sheet of the spreadsheet. This spreadsheet has 2 sheets in it. So let me just, of course, I'm going to pick app dev, and I'm going to say create my application. Now I have
And for
to give
champs
this guy
watching,
a name.
this is the 2018 speaker list where champions are eagerly waiting, finding out whether their sessions are accepted. Maureen's about to let the cat out of the bag. No, you're not. No, you're not.
No, I'm not.
It's a good tease.
Think speakers. Let's add 2018 to it. Why not? Now I can give it an icon. I could upload one. I can decide whether I want it to be blue or pink. I guess let's go with pink. You can choose from a set of pre-existing icons, or I could give it a puppy icon. Why not? And then I could give it a description, or I could just save my application. So there we go. I've got all my fields came in. They're defined here. So this was just extracted from the spreadsheet. My application and actually my API is all defined at this point. And then I can go to the builder and I can say, I just want, this was a spreadsheet. All I really want is a table. So I drag and drop my table. I say I only want to look at 5 rows at a time, and I want to save this guy. And yes, the page saved. So, I could set various properties on this grid. I could edit this column, and here is where we actually have data binding, which is not showing, but does work. So this is all code that is in development right now. So launch the grid. Now this is our old prototype rendering, but this is what we will actually be shipping. This is the page that I just designed by dropping a table on the application. This is a React table control. This is not the real Think list. Although I could add one. Let's see, let's go to the next page. And because that's where my new one went, we're changing this to go to the top. Let's see, his role is, I don't know, he's CEO. He's going to talk about Pink, and he's going to talk on Tuesday. And I'm going to add my data, and we're all good. So I can refresh, I can go back to the previous page, and data is there. So not only do we have that, I can go to the Explorer now. All right. So we just created an application. Now let's go see the API we created. So let me just refresh to make sure this guy is in the list. There is our ThinkSpeakers 2018 that we just created. We can get, here's a get, we can add one. This is the same data we did, including the data we just added. I could also use the same API to add a record. Now this is just the strong loop API Explorer. You could use any REST client or code to do this. Clearly we're keeping a lot of metadata about each particular document, but let's see. So maybe I should talk about something. Architect. Live grid, and let me do this on Friday. Try it out. There's a post. Did it work? Let's just go back to the UI. Run it. Well, it certainly showed up in the old runtime. Does it show up in the new runtime? And we have 2 pages, and there we are. So we quickly built an application from a spreadsheet, gave it a UI. We're able to run it, access, add data, either through the UI or programmatically. So that's all good. But what if I didn't have a spreadsheet? Let me just go back. What if I wanted an application to track my expenses? So, and I could start from an existing app if there was an expenses app, but there isn't. So let me just build from scratch and say team expenses. That's available. Just give it a pretty icon and create it. And now, if I'm starting from scratch, I need to define my data. So a person has an expense, so name. And there's an item. And there is a cost. And there is, when did it happen? So, and to make it easy on people, how about I just say today? And if you saw my drop down there, there's lots of add functions we could have used, but this is the one that's appropriate here. So there's my data. I'm all done with that. Again, I'm going to build a table, and let's see, let's hope we don't have 5 of those. Here the data binding is still not showing up, all right. It was yesterday, active development for the win. There we go. You are seeing really live code here. So we have built our app. Notice it has no data yet because there's nothing there from the spreadsheet. I could add it in the old runtime, but I like the new rendering a lot better. So I'm going to go here and see, add today, just filled in the date for me. So my Diet Coke expense, whoops, Maureen has a Diet Coke, and I don't know, it was $2 maybe. I could add another row, and Maureen had airfare, and that was, let's see, $2.99. So again, I can create from scratch, get my data. I can go to the Explorer, and when I refresh this page, we will see another app here, and that is Team Expenses. I can take this application, let me go back, grab the URL, and because here you're seeing this application being used full screen, which might be what you want to do, or you might want to put it in a community. So full screen in Connections, you would imagine something like Live Grid being here and going to your Live Grid and running your grids. That would be one way in. But if you wanted to embed one of these guys in a community, I've set up a rich content widget here. If I just want to edit this, and I intended to put the ThinkSpeaker tracking in there. So let's just pretend that I did that one. For now, we're using an iframe. We are looking to create its own widget. You'll see why in a minute. So say I want this to be, I don't know, 800 wide and 500 tall. I'm just, so there's our iframe, save it. And then in the community is all this data. Now, obviously, we would size it more appropriately. If I made this guy tinier, actually that is worth doing, because that will show you that we have a responsive UI. So if I just edit this guy and make it narrower, let's see, let me make it 500. Hopefully that's narrower enough to see. There's our responsive UI. Now it all fits. So we could probably even sneak it down there if we wanted to. So anyway, that is the application in play. Before I put it in the community, I might actually want to share it with someone. So if I go back to the design, there's this share tab. So I'm the owner of this application, but I could add anyone I wanted, like Jason, Gary, at now actually I want him to usually pay my expenses. So he can be an editor and I can share it with him. We will have people type ahead integrating with your organization at that point. So that is building Scratch from scratch. Let me just go back to the home page. And what if this was for 2017 and I wanted to do it again? I could just start again from team expenses. I could create a new application. I'd need to give it a new name because these guys, we have a URL for each one and we have an API for each one. So expenses again. Now I'd probably want to say something like 2018. I could give it a different icon, save it. There's my application. So then when we launch this application, you'll see that there's no data. And again, through the API, there would be no data. So let me show you how you can connect to Domino data and bring that into either into Connections or other parts of your organization, wherever you want to run an app, or just give it a new UI. So I'm connecting to my Domino server on my little MacBook Pro here. So I have to give it an IP address instead of its very pretty name, through the magic of VirtualBox, because that was the only way I could get there from here. So let me pick my travel approval, NSF. I can get a list of views, of which there is one. It's a fairly simple application, to be honest. I do have to type in the form name for now, but we're working on that with the Domino folks to just get that list of forms from the Domino Access Service API. I can create my application. I can say travel approval 2018. I can give it a pretty icon. I can make it blue. Can save it. And poof, I have all the fields on the form, actually the columns in the view have been added, and they have found my data, found my fields. I can take this, I can drop a table for it. I can, set some properties on it. I could even add columns because both Domino and Mongo are forgiving about extra items on the document. I remember to save my page. And I launch my page, and I see I have some data here. There is a bug with the old prototype runtime, but we don't care because we have our nice, pretty new runtime. Now I did add an empty row at one point. Let me go to 192. If I go here to this view, you'll see this is exactly the data we have over in Domino. I can go back to my live grid. I can add one. I just added 2, so I can, let's see, I can add destination Ireland, Maureen, see, 12, 15, and no, I'm not going tomorrow. Too much to do for the holidays. 4, and no, it's not approved. And we'll just leave the blank row there. And let's just go back to Domino, refresh the page, and there, so I can delete it over here. I don't have, if I had my client up, I could delete that. It's two-way conversation. I can delete this empty row. I could delete this one, go back here, request full CRUD on Domino applications, and then I could take this application, I could put it in my community, and Domino has a whole new place to live. Domino Data does. So, and we are looking at having functions to actually run Domino agents. So anyway, that is where we are with LiveGrid today. More to come. It is still a baby, but actually maybe it's starting to be a bit of a toddler, and we hope to get this into your hands very, very soon. We're working quite quickly to pull it all together. So if you have any questions, let me know. And back to you.
Maureen, it was pretty compelling. One question I would have, if I may, is when are you thinking it will ship? Even if it's not a specific date or even a quarter, are you able to elaborate on perhaps even a calendar half?
Without getting fired, you mean? That's,
yeah.
I do want to finish this product, but at least before they fire me. But they haven't fired me yet. We are shooting to get this into people's hands in the first half of 2018.
Wow.
Awesome.
So, and you can see there's lots to do, but we have a substantial team and they're all excellent. So I'm actually able to sleep at night with that so far. I mean, things can happen. So I can't put that date in stone or blood or anything like that. But that's what we are trying to do.
Well, that's impressive. One other question I would have is, you spoke to some of the benefits Pink delivers via its architecture with microservices and containerization. If I was a customer who had already invested in Docker and perhaps Kubernetes, will this also be delivered as images that a customer can update to benefit from your more frequent release schedule?
Yes, and we do have to talk to customers about, do they want to push or do they want to pull, because maybe there's a bug fix on Wednesday and maybe they want it and maybe they don't. So obviously backwards compatibility, I come with that heritage. We're not going to be breaking people's apps or anything, but some customers want to process around when their apps, we may want to deliver continuously, but that doesn't mean they want to continuously receive. So we have to work that through. But yes, certainly to our cloud, it'll, we fix something, it'll be right up there. But we do need to give people control on when they can take the new images. So.
And that's great. And given how containerization works, if they've got configuration artifacts stored outside that image and the runtime container that's based on that image, dropping a new image in and start spinning up a container based on it gets the new code in their hands, and they don't have to go through a heavyweight deployment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Maureen, we just saw a couple of the data tables in your presentation. You mentioned you're building pages. Is there an idea of how to build kind of a flow of control between pages? So maybe I could create something like a form and have something fill into a data table later on. How would that look like? Or is that something is still in the planning, or is that, how would you build something like this?
We're actually, it's not delivered yet, but I have seen it.
Okay.
I have that we will have simple actions that will go so not even writing formula, but basically actions that will do the page navigations. Not all that different from how in X Pages you would go to page. We have some of the same people working on this, so
Okay.
Including me. So there's a lot of the same thinking. So Grandma can just say, she could make, if Grandma wants a 2-page application, so she might want her table on 1 page, and she might, maybe she only wants to show 4 fields. She defined 20 fields. She only wants 4 of them in the table. I mean, this is a common pattern we're all familiar with. But if you add a record, she wants all 20 pieces of data, then you would go to the page, have it in, edits mode, and the button would be a submit button, and then just some logic, some built-in logic to navigate. So Grandma is one of our personas. So she doesn't have to write logic, and there will be other ways to navigate too, but the built-in ways, so someone can write an application without having to write code. So yeah, 1 page, 2 pages, 20 pages, up to you.
Okay, so is this something for release 1, or is this something that's one of the incremental parts coming later in the year? Well, later
that's release 1.
That's release 1?
Yeah,
wow, awesome. Nice.
Yep. Yeah,
good stuff.
We need multi-page apps.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Have you thought about operational aspects much, or can you talk to that? If say I'm a DevOps or an IT operations leader, what do I need to have to run this in my environment? Back it up, manage it? What sorts of tasks and considerations are there?
To be fair, I'm not a DevOps person. We've thought of, so there are other people on the team more expert in that area than me. But your Mongo database, you definitely would want to be backing up. Mongo database or databases, maybe you have a clustered configuration. So you need to make sure all your services stay up and can respin. Otherwise, there's not a lot to do for the application itself other than back up the data. Which is sort of normal advice, back it up. But I can look into if there's anything more to do, but I don't run our cloud, thank God.
Understood. Is a configuration
hard.
in Mongo, or where are those artifacts stored?
Well, we have Docker files and then Kubernetes around that. And around Kubernetes, we have CFC, which I think is Containers for Cloud or Cloud for Containers or something like that. And basically, we have a deployment, we have YAML files and says, this is where Mongo is. And then Kubernetes can inject. So that whole chain will get everything all set up. The authentication has to be set up too. We have to register app IDs and things like that.
So as far as how does the app find Mongo, that's all handled by the container configuration.
Yes.
Is it app-specific configuration? Is the rest of that sort of all inside the Mongo database, or is it stored somewhere else?
The app-specific? Well, we're using a Mongo service, so we're basically saying, hey, use that one. There is some configuration we have in our own application. This is the name of our database. At the moment, every application you create is a Mongo collection. That's, I've been thinking about, is that a good idea or not a good idea? What if you have 100,000 applications? So we're starting to think things of, do we want to change that or not? So far, we haven't hit any issues, but we're not at a point where we would be hitting issues. So, but there's configuration within the application and at all the YAML files all the way up to deployment. So.
And your own sort of config that the customer wouldn't need to touch, isn't that material to them, even if that's in the image? I think the customer would be more concerned with what would they have to manage and where do those artifacts live.
Yeah.
sounds like it's pretty straightforward once you've got the rest of the environment spun up.
Yep. Yeah, we're trying to make it easy. So we have another team doing that, which is why I'm sort of like, okay, they can worry about that. So that's why I'm a little bit light in that area, because I'm focused on making this the best app builder in the world. So.
Absolutely. And Heiko, did you have any other questions for Maureen?
I just went through my list. The only thing that I have left would be like about you mentioned it in parts of it already. What about scaling this in the production environment? Are there any plans yet, or any considerations on your side yet on how many applications I can deploy into one container? When do I have to split that up into a second one? How do I tier all that things together? Is that something a customer would have to do? Is that something that's maybe manageable by, say, Kubernetes out from outside? It's like, hey, well, this guy is running a little short on resources. Like, I'll fire up another one, and we'll just keep on relaying on the second one. I don't know, just like for curiosity. I don't know if you can answer that, but.
I mean, first of all, I don't want to start from scratch here, because we've got the loopback guys in the building, or not in the building, but actually some of them are, but in our company. So I want to look to their performance tests rather than have us do it all ourselves, see if there's anything we can learn from theirs. And to be fair, we don't have that data yet. And then we don't know, have we made it better? Have we made it worse? If we've made it worse, we got to fix it. If it's not good enough and they can help, we'll get them to help. So we don't know yet, but we need to know before we ship, so we can give people the right, what you need. It works. We have it running on a few internal pool servers, but they don't get the load production does. We know multiple people can use it. We know that multiple. But how big does that multiple get? That we have to get that answer, and we don't have it yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, totally fair. I mean, you have to know when you hit the ceiling, right? And
yeah. And we wanted our real runtime in there, because that's going to affect. I think now we're getting close enough to our real footprint that the data would actually be, any data we get would actually be meaningful. Just with that prototype original runtime, that didn't have objects, that was a whole different framework. You might get a different answer. So I think we're ready to get that answer now. So.
Okay. Well,
so a lot of that work would be for you to determine what the initial sizing would be, but once a customer has an order of magnitude, Kubernetes can handle that. Kubernetes has really granular control over, when CPU utilization exceeds X, spin up more containers, start with this many, scale to this many. It's really, really granular, as I understand it. So, so a lot of that, they can manage it with Kubernetes. You need to tell them, what do you think the baseline load's going to be based on their anticipated usage? That's sort of a future tech line sizing exercise, I suppose, right, that we're used to with other IBM products.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if anybody's got questions for Maureen, they can post comments on the YouTube video, or this will be posted on the C3UG blog, and we'll have comments enabled on the blog post. You can pose their questions there. Maureen, we'll reach out to you to get answers for anybody that should pose them.
I'd be happy to. That's and I can get some deeper answers on some of the things here too. So I can put that right in those same places.
Absolutely. Well, this has been amazing. On behalf of C3UG, Heiko and myself, thank you immensely for presenting. And for viewers, if you don't mind commenting, subscribing. In addition, small channels don't get much of a boost for suggested videos. You may want to hit the bell icon in YouTube, which will notify you if you have new videos from the C3UG.